Hello, everyone, and welcome to the broadcast. New Mechanist, and today we are going to be getting back into our game dev project. Been making a lot of progress offline, trying to get the stuff that is largely busy work. Not really busy work. Just a lot of change it and fix the errors, change it and fix the errors kind of things. Such as we changed some of the reply structure to some of our events. Not terribly exciting. But it does open up possibilities. Before we get too much further, let's check in with the kitties. We actually have Sky over there on the bed. He's actually prone to napping there for quite a bit. He'll just hang out on those blankets when they're stacked up. He's not as fond of the big pillow. Of Mason returning to the bed. He recognizes it's stream time, so it's time to snooze. Sky, what are you doing here? I suspect we're going to get the cats kind of running around. Might take them a little bit to settle. It has been a slow warm-up day, Hey there, sharpshooter. Welcome, welcome. Hello, Ember. Hello. What is going on there? Sky and Mason being big cat bullies. Or at least adjacent. Mason and Sky at least have been prone to I'm the big male cat, I'm in charge kind of behavior. Hey there, Lore. Oh wow, a whole crowd of them there in the play area. And hey there, SMAC. Welcome, welcome. We are just getting started. Normally try to chat a little bit, especially since, you know, Twitch needs to run ads. How's my day been going? Tired. Took me forever to finally crank the brain down enough to sleep last night. / very late this morning. So we're still in that get everything wired up. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Ooh, boy, that is a... I'm guessing that's SMC? I'm gonna say that's SMC, but thank you for the super chat. Thank you. We have... It could be that I'm seeing a different handle. Different elements show different user identifiers. So forgive me if I misidentify you, but thank you for the super chat. I hope you know who you are. Do my cats play together? Yes. The most common ones to play together are Sherbet and Molly. They are... So Molly is the youngest and newest, and Sherbet and Mason are kind of directly behind that. Ish. I'd have to check and see if Sammy is younger than Sherbet and Mason. She might be. No, I don't think so. Anyhow, Sherbet and Molly will play. They'll run around. But all of them will to some extent. If I get out like a toy to play with, most of them will come out. And the kind of the personalities of the cats are on full display. Sammy doesn't really get engaged. Sherbet and Mason want to get engaged. as does Sky. Ember will be on the sidelines. Like she'll grab at like what are they called? Just kind of like your toy on a line kind of thing. She'll grab at it, but she doesn't make a lot of effort to seize it. It's more when it passes, she kind of meerkats up and swats at it. Mason is very aggressive about trying to grab at toys, and he will try to steal them. Like, once he's got a hold of it, he won't let it go and tries to pull it away and run off with it. Sky will try to keep it. Sky is very much a catch and immediately kill kind of cat. But he also doesn't want to let it go. Most of the others are more interested in chasing it around. Laser pointers work. Laser pointers work, as they do with pretty much all cats. Sky is much less interested in laser pointers. He wants something that he can actually grab. Which is not uncommon. Okay. Let's switch over here just a moment. Editing a video, and I'm using OK software. Definitely need to upgrade. Any suggestions? The one I use is DaVinci Resolve. I believe you can start using that one for free. There are a couple of things that you would need the paid version for, but it is a one-time purchase if you get to that point. But DaVinci Resolve is full-powered software that is strong video editing. You can do a lot of stuff with it. Takes some getting used to, but if you're used to, from what I've seen, what I believe is the Adobe stuff, which the name escapes me, has similar look. So, I mean, ultimately, it's a robust video editing tool. It'll look similar. But that's the one that I would suggest is DaVinci Resolve by Blackmagic. Okay. So since last time, and again, do feel free to keep conversing on whatever, ask whatever questions you'd like. This is a learn along as I go kind of thing, but that doesn't mean that you have to be versed in or necessarily interested in participating directly in the coding process. So one of the things I added is game message reply. Previously, we were just returning a Boolean, but that was starting to get too limited for what we wanted to do. What it meant previously is this message is done. If it was true, then don't process that message any further. Stop it where it is. Which is something that we want to know. If you send damage down the line and all of the damage gets used up, then we don't want that damage to go further. In theory, it won't really go further because it'll get consumed, but it can lead to problems if you don't stop it properly. But we also wanted one that was acted on. So the message can continue. The message isn't completely used up, but we want to know if anything was done with it. Because if nothing is done with it, that might mean, no damage was taken or it did not bounce or something like that. That becomes important with a new one, which has a crazy long name. Let's find it. Collision target, then own health. So we're replacing a two-stage operation with bullets to be a single-stage operation. Well, a two-part operation into a single part. Still two stages. So, like, when an enemy hits the player, the enemy just sends damage. So that is change target health. Or target health. We aren't really going to need own health. We'll keep it around. Just in case. But target then own says, okay, I'm going to send damage to the target. Do we have a target? We're going to get the reply message. Reply.merge says, Anything that's true in the other one, make it true in this one, but do not overwrite true with false, essentially. So if one consumes and the other doesn't, it counts as consume. So we send that health to the target, and it's originating with the entity. If it did anything with that message, and this is important because it's possible that damage gets sent, and it's not used. The entity is already dead from all prior instances of damage that round. We don't want the bullet to count that as a hit. If what it would otherwise strike is already gone, even though it takes it into the beginning of the next frame to remove that entity, we don't want the reflected damage to happen. So what this means is that we don't get all of the yarn balls bouncing off of one entity. Oh, wow, that was interesting. Capture card hiccuped there for a moment. So we've reverted the yarn balls to use random direction, but let's just get a bunch of them. So what you'll see is one yarn ball will deflect off of each enemy that gets hit, if at all. Previously, all of the yarn balls in a cluster, and they're heavily overlapped. You can see the darker ball ones are heavily overlapped. They would all deflect off in a big cluster, and that's not great because they're using up a bounce meaninglessly. It would also mean that if 10 things were fired at once and they all hit a target that only needed one hit, that target would soak all 10 at once, which makes projectile coverage less valuable there, or potentially completely useless. Makes things like piercing potentially less useful. All those kind of things. But we addressed that by adding that result. We went back and revised the gate reply, the gate result, to also be explicit variables instead of a bit field. Bit field was accomplishing the same thing, but this way we dodged some of the risk of math going wrong. Now it is just Boolean. Check it explicitly. But yeah, thing I want to be looking at today is the little the explosion there. The problem we have with the explosion is that it is a thing. It is a thing that exists in the world. So it pops into existence, and at the beginning of the next frame, it essentially says, "I'm going away now, but but I will do one instance of collision." That's not great. Primarily because there is all kinds of extra handling to allow that entity to exist for a single frame. And it makes other things needlessly complicated due to that presence. Let's make this weirder looking while we discuss. How about, since it's going in a random direction, we can do this and then this. There we go. Because I don't want to have that extra handling. And an explosion is needlessly complicated. Sounds like one of your Path of Exile character names. Though we need to have a noun in there, Needlessly complicated doorknob. So instead of the explosion being a kind of what amounts to a living thing in the game world that exists for a single frame, what I want it to be is a special type of thing that, upon coming into existence, triggers the collision handling. So we say there's going to be a circle that happens right here that has this collision mask. That way, when the explosion goes off, regardless of the visual, it happens. Like then and there. Which can be useful because it could, we can make it do a lot of stuff since it's going to be calculated immediately. It is as if it happened within that same frame. We would then ultimately need to pair it with the corresponding idea of a visual effect that isn't tied to, again, a living thing in the world. It's not a blob, it's not a bullet, it's not the player. It is just a special effect on the screen, a particle. Or similar. Could still be a sprite, could be that same graphic there. But I do want to change the explosions to be individual particles. That way we can be a little more flexible and it's less of a pain to animate them, because that is a chunky, not terribly pretty explosion graphic there. But yeah, so you can still see another of the issues that I have is that I haven't solved yet. If you watch the explosions are going off in clusters. You can see there aren't gaps in the explosions. We're often seeing several of them explode at once. And that's because the current logic is not when the projectile expires. It is on any impact. And unlike the prior thing where we could stage the damage, a collision doesn't get consumed. It passes on down the chain saying, this bullet bumped into something. And that's what's triggering the explosion effect, is it bumped into something. But we don't really want that to be considered a bump if the target is gone. We can't do something like send 0 damage, because 0 damage is going to be immediately consumed. Hey there, Tass. So there's some new logic that will ultimately be needed for the explode on impact. But today I want to see if we can get a entity that is a raw collision effect. Fire a circle, and that circle's collisions will happen. So, sort of a pseudo entity that doesn't go through the entity manager. But it will have similarities with the core entity, and that is a set of behaviors to fire upon collision. There will definitely be some additional complexity there. So that's what we're shooting for. That's what we're shooting for today. So we have Entity Collision Space Manager here. That is our node-based solution for this. It is... Oh, hey, buddy. Moved my foot and nudged Sherbet as he was exiting the footrest. Okay, so the logic you were seeing was when something hits an enemy, more things spawn. We're showing it with explosion, but it can be other bullets, that kind of thing. So when the yarn ball hits an enemy, a homing mouse emits from it, kind of thing. You can do. So that's when you can, with particular upgrades, you can make it so when one thing hits another, it creates a third thing. Hey there, Levi, welcome. You can also set it up so that, so the blobs, more of them spawn. They spawn perpetually. So it's not even a matter of when the yarn balls hit them. It's just, right now, once a second, you spawn a bunch of blobs and they move towards the player. That is not indicative of actual gameplay. They move way too fast, and they start out way too numerous. And the yarn balls are emitting at a steady pace, regardless of how long they live right now. There is going to have to be some additional thought as far as are there costs to adding power-ups kind of thing. Do we want to have that? How much? How little? That kind of stuff. Okay. So right now we're watching the we're watching the entity manager to create these. And when so all the interaction is with entity manager. What we want to have is what amounts to a special thing. There is nothing intrinsic about this part here that is tied to entities. So we are creating collision areas when they're added. Let's step through here. So when an entity is added, I'm making a new collision area for that entity. This is an invisible shape in the world. Hey, Lunar. Let's see. Did I add the Barbie TARDIS clothing closet yet? A bigger on the inside closet with Barbie's fashion in it that your character can't even wear. I'm reminded I recently played, what was it? Oh, name escapes me, but it was effectively like an area where some sort of like power plant catastrophe happens in UK, Europe kind of location. And your character ends up on the inside, and it's figuring out what happened, how to get out, how to solve the mystery, that kind of stuff. And there is a particular location that you can get to that if you look in the distance, you can see a blue police box. And if you get close enough, you will hear the TARDIS teleporting sound, and it will be gone. Which was a fun touch. But let's see. So we detect that a new entity enters the world. A bullet arrives. An entity arrives. The player arrives. That kind of thing. So we make a new collision area. We pin it to this. The entity collision space manager is now its parent. I can show you that in process here. We're loading up Godot. We're going to do that because of this, which will probably visible collision shapes. This is probably going to make it even laggier, but we should be able to see what the entities look like in the background. Loading data. Okay, so you see how there are little blue circles appearing. Now they're appearing behind the grid. That's an interesting thing. But you can see little blue circles as the entities pass over the dark gray areas. That is what is detecting if they hit each other or not. It is an interesting side effect, the blue circle thing. Because it seems to be happening on the lowest visual layer, or at least below the entities. But, okay, so that's what they look like. Everything's a circle moving around right now. We also want to change that, but... so what we're going to do is we're going to pause, we're going to go back to Godot, and we're going to look at remote. I think I'm trying to see here. I'm guessing it's going to be because the collision space manager is below the map shader renderer. So if we go all the way, well, we're going to move that down in a minute. But if we look at our collision space manager, it's got all these area 2Ds here. I could get other data into these to make it so it's not just area 2D. But I don't know that it would be descriptive enough to matter. And each of these shapes has a collision shape. This one is, let's see, should be, it's a circle. It has a radius of 16, which makes it probably like a blob or the player, that kind of thing. I think it'd actually be the player if it's got a radius of 16. Or an explosion. Anywho. But that's how this is operating. It pins all of these objects to it. When these areas are not in play, it deletes them. Kind of. The collision space one doesn't delete them. It keeps them around, I believe. So we'll stop that. And for a quick test, I think I know how to change that. Mildly distracted, as is tradition. Messages, it's in game. So we have map renderer here. We're adding it towards the bottom. And its collision manager is the problem. Last in, highest level of visual. It layers them over. So if we take the collision manager and we put you down here, that won't actually, what I'm doing won't work. I need to start it in Godot, but we'll make sure it builds. Stop that, start it in Godot. We need to start it in Godot because on the Godot editor side, it sets the flag to make the collision areas visible. Nope, weird. How odd. One would think that would work. Let's try again. Make sure I set things up properly. Look at our remote listing. We look at our game. Entity Collision Space Manager is still higher up in the tree. Oh, because this isn't where I need to change it. Yes, Lunar, you'd have to put it on top to make it more visible. Let's undo that. Here we go. So map renderer is currently up higher. We are going to put you here. We're going to put entity renderer over map renderer. Entity manager could be later. It could be in all of these, but that doesn't really matter at the moment. Okay, so compile this. I had changed it in the update order, not in the visual order, not where I added it to the tree. Okay. So now you can see the circles. So you can also see the circle for the explosion isn't working how I would want it to. It can hit them, but the collisions only work for entities on entry into each other. So unless a circle enters another one, it doesn't register. We want to be able to have an immediate check. Um, so we could test this logic. Let's go back over here where it's easier to code. Let's get that committed here. Ah, okay. All of these imports are because of I ran it in Godot. That is a possibility, Lunar, but there is still the edge case of the circle begins very small inside the other circle. Doesn't matter how much it grows at that point, it's still inside the circle. We should be able to do an overlap check and make that happen right then and there, but there's other kind of quandaries to that. Okay, let's... We're gonna check all of this. This is... This is we're making the collision debugging visible. And then... There's our Godot imports. We'll get that into the tree so that I don't lose track of that particular change. Okie doke. So if we look at our collision space manager here. Now this is an opportunity. Right here, this is an opportunity for us to do the check. So I wonder if... if there's an opportunity for us to do this. It said go to definition, not... Weird. Did I click the wrong thing? Oh well. No, I don't. That one. Weird. Okay. So we create it, we have an entity. Oh, why I need to have that in a property. Anywho. Oh, this is efforts to make it protected. Doesn't need to be protected. Doesn't need to be protected to that extent. So we initialize it, we give it an entity, we give it a shape. So we set monitoring equals true. So this is as soon as this happens, it is collidable. Can we... Are there methods for this? Our events, collision layer, draw, which is really only relevant. Well, an area can have an image. So there should be a way to check for an overlap. But I don't know if there's a good way to force it. This is happening during the physics frame. This isn't the greatest time to be... We shouldn't be moving things. I'm sorry. Collision checking would normally happen after this step. Like right after this step. Or right before. Anyway. I think it's right after. Because this is a step where we're being told, do the physics stuff, do all the moving. Here we go. Yeah, once during the physics step, it does a pass and says, has there been a change of state here? Is there a get overlapping? Yeah. Okay, this is going to be a Godot array of area 2Ds. The fact that I've incorporated the Godot list here is potentially going to get wonky because systems.collections.generic will have concepts that overlap with Godot naming. So once we're using some of Godot's returns, often what we have to do is specify, when I say array, I mean this one. Or similar. Or we have to, in the code, say Godot.collections.array. Which is a mess. Okay, so we're gonna go in here. So this is the player coming into existence. We step over that, and we say overlaps. There's nothing in it. Actually, we're gonna expedite this, or the debugging, I should say. Yep. Yeah, we can explicitly say in the using, we can say that the array is a particular one, which is handy. But yeah, Godot has all of the standard collection types defined within its own scripting language too. So every now and then you run into like collisions like, do you mean the Godot one? Print, is it prefix it? Exactly. It is a result of the fact that what we're doing right now is we have a C# library that is connected to the Godot engine and GD script via a bridge. And you can see the bridging logic in the debug stack, or at least in the execution stack, when you pause often. Okay, we go in here. And we are going to do this. Okay, we are not getting any overlaps there. Interesting. Are we added to the tree by this point, though? We aren't. We aren't, that's why. Okay, so this is just the collision area. We want in the collision space manager, we created it right here. This point is where the, well, no, we're initializing, and that's when we were, it's already on the tree. Clean that up. Doesn't mean we'll get overlaps every time, but you'd think it would happen. Of course it is. Let's remove that. No, it doesn't like this. Okay, we'll just fully qualify it there. That's what I was referring to earlier, where we say, okay, the return from this is a Godot array. Right here is where we should be getting overlaps happening. So we are going to do that. Okay. So there's nothing in this collection. But why? It has a shape. It has a mask. So if we look at collision area... Oh, well, sadly it has a lot of extra. I wonder if there is more to this that we'll have to deal with. Well, I mean, clearly there is. But we're doing this because I want to be able to have a check for this. I want to be able to check upon the existence of it. I suspect that this will only work on the subsequent step. Because the collision area is currently... It has just been added to the tree. And if we wait, it doesn't help us. So it's just part of the tree. But this should, based on the text here, it's we process all of the collisions at once. What I'm guessing is what this is actually doing is querying all of the collisions that have happened and say, get the ones relevant to this area. So this isn't really what we want. So let's... collision shape 2D shape. So it's new. Dot. Are looking for what we're looking for is any indication of a way to do the collision check at this time. Like, force the check. That's still not ideal. What we might have to do is trigger that on the subsequent frame. Is we instantiate it and then we do it after. But what I don't want to have... Like, ideally, what I don't want to have to do is put that collision shape in the world for a full frame. But we may have to for those purposes, where we say, okay, finding anything in collision shape. So it has to exist. I don't want it to be an entity because we, again, we run into the issue of all of the extra stuff surrounding the entity. Let me show you what part of my problem is here. And let's look at our changes here. We're gonna discard these changes because I don't need to commit those. Those are little... Oops. There we go. Keep that open. Base entity manager. I think the entity set to persist is in here. Because we have a visual. Maybe it's in the entity renderer. Rendering for the entity. And we're using an individual node. Trying to remember where I put this. Okay, but what's happening is that there is a flag in the entity somewhere, or in the processing of the entity, that says, let the visual linger. And we end up changing its collision type so that it doesn't do anything. Let's check in entity. And there is song and dance surrounding that. Yeah, here we go. Entity category event changed. So the entity needs to continue to live in order to keep rendering, because its visual nature or its visibility is determined by the presence of the entity. If the entity goes away, the visual goes away. Let's see, where are we? We need our category. This is when we're initializing it. Yeah, update entity category. And we can find this elsewhere. We have one reference to it. We jump to here. Okay, entity manager. We are going through our update, and we have entity category changes. There's a whole collection for this that says, okay, for each of them, update the category. Which isn't great, because this shuffles around where the entities are. Like, is this an enemy? Is this, whatever. We use that in order to get one. Say, find me an enemy. Are there other ways we could do that? Yes, if we can get this collision thing working. Where we could get overlapping areas and say, hey, I have detected all of these enemies within this circle that you drew. Select one of them. Or select the nearest one, or what have you. Okay, we're going to resume this. Quick break, though. Be right back. I'm back. SMC, I do like. We have we've been through a lot of different types of music on the channel, and especially since we started shifting to much more of this code content, I found that I'm really enjoying the piano more, even during more actiony games. Piano and strings. So I would prefer that this whole mess go away. Because we end up having to pull an entity out of a category, put it in another one. I would prefer that we never change the collision type of an entity. Because again, there's a lot of like error surface that can happen during that. Let me do a quick check. Do a ray cast, but we would need its position and the RID of the shape. Ew. Well, that's one way to do it. That's one way that we could do it. Well, thank you again for joining SMC, and thank you for the super chat. Let's see, we are... Yeah. I'm reading some documentation right now. Okay, yeah. The list of collisions is updated per frame, so we wouldn't get this until the next update. Which is a possibility, but we don't want those collisions to be handled otherwise. What we may need to do, though, is... So we could come up with a special step. But... yeah. I think we're going to need a special step. So when we create these things... Here, let's... So an entity collision area is going to have messages on itself. So that's, yeah. So we have on area entered. And that is going to trigger our own on area entered. And we're going to raise our entity area collided. So this is where we're saying, hey, if it is an entity collision area, we are going to emit that. We need twofold, is we need, one, a way to indicate what it is that is colliding without it having to be an entity. Right now, all of the collision logic assumes that the thing colliding with it is going to be an entity. So if we go to entity area collided in our space manager here, we're going to check if a collision is present, which is okay, we're seeing if we've already got it. If we've already got a collision between the source and the target, then we're going to skip it. So it won't let multiple collisions from the same source to the same target happen. That may change in the future. We may allow multi-hitting, but once per frame is still plenty. So now we have all of our collisions. So source to target. And these are still expecting entity collision areas. We could have a parent class to this. Again, what we're trying to do is not have it be an entity, because we don't want that entity to have all of the other behaviors. Hey, Mason. Mason can get real needy. He'll hang out at the right side of my chair and jump up and paw at me. He wants attention. He wants back and belly scratches. Molly comes charging over to him. What you doing? Again, right now, all collisions are expected to involve an entity. That there is some sort of source entity. And that could lead to problems. If we make a special type, we have to make sure we go into the logic and say, there might not be a source entity. There's just a collision happened. Sometimes there can be, but this is a level of complication, or a new complication. So what do we do? What do we do? If we add it and we keep track of that area and then we get rid of it when we're done. So let's go to, I think, update. Well, check collisions. So we have gathered all of those from the events. We've pooled them all together, and we've got our check collisions. And in our physics process, we ask the collision manager, check for collisions. Every physics step, we check for the collisions. So now we're going to go through each of those, and we're going to say there has to be an entity. We could change this around, but so again, Collision Manager is expecting there to be an entity. And entities have all of this baggage that is associated with it being something on screen. There has to be a texture. Has behaviors, it has IDs, but how it moves, its targeting, what its animation is, any sort of health that it has. The only problem that we have with it being an entity is actually wrangling its existence. So we want to check for collisions. We want to check, and right now we're saying it has to be active. So if an entity is essentially dying, it sets itself to be inactive. But a collision doesn't really have a lifespan. What? I can't recall exactly which cat's introduction resulted in Mason getting vocal. Loudly vocal. Before he had a really silent voice. Really soft, kind of meh. But he has, let's say, tripled in volume lately. If he doesn't get the attention he wants. It's still meh. Giving him some scratches here. He just rolling around. Yeah. There you go. He saw his brother come out. Sherbet lurks. He's infrequently on camera because that is a very exposed position, and he's not usually like that. He is present if you know where to look. So he will be slightly off camera from the bed, usually up from that camera. Let's go through them here. So usually up from the bed camera, he'll be out of sight there. From the cat tree where Sky is, that curtain that's next to it, if you go all the way down the curtain to the base of it, such that it's kind of between the curtain, a little stairway, and the cat tree, he'll be hiding there. Under my footrest, in a cat carrier by the door, anywhere that's kind of a concealed lookout position is where he'll be. Mason is likely to get back on the bed shortly. So if it's an entity, we dodge the problems. But we want that entity to only be around for a short period. So we could have it removed instantly after, to where it is, do the collisions. So we queue up the collisions after its state is there. But then it has to go away. This doesn't need to be true. If the source doesn't have to be active, the source can be dead by that point, and still have inflicted everything that it needs to. Yeah. If we say that the source doesn't have to be around, or doesn't have to be active anymore, then we can queue the entity to be removed immediately after it takes action to do its collisions. I mean, effectively, its time slice behavior could just be go away. And we're only persisting them because of the graphic. If we go into Entity and we look at how we have, it has a texture key, it has animations, that kind of thing. That doesn't necessarily need to be true. If instead an entity had visuals, so like here we have update animation, but if we updated the position and that got passed to the visual, which it does, when we're updating the position, yeah, we could say update visuals. And instead, the visuals handled this. So a sprite animation would do this kind of thing. You know, if you're not moving, go idle. If you are moving, this is if our animation has changed. So right now there's moving or not. If each time we update the visual, it just knows to check, like a sprite animation looks at it and says, what is its current proposed movement? Then it would be able to then interpret that information. We could also have just state information passed along so that animations could react. So we could say it is moving, it is not, it is moving fast, it is airborne, that kind of thing. Or it could look at the raw data. So let's... I want to see where our linger is. Rendering. Y sort setup. So we have added in logic that says this is how to take a sprite sheet given the information about it and convert it into a sprite animation in Godot. Normally, there's like a whole manual process you can do to create this sprite sheet. We are doing that on the fly with the information we have. So animation changed. So a sprite animation is a list of sprite frames, a list of sets of sprite frames, and they are identified by number more or less. So we convert the animation to a string, its number, rename them by number. We load it in, and then we tell it to play. Start looping your animation now. Rotate to face. Where do we do that lingering? It's where we change its collision area. Category. So we have now changed its category. We raised the on-entity category change from new to old. This is in the entity. And the collision area sets it to the new one in the mask. The entity manager is tracking that as well. And in the entity manager, we change those around. Okay, this is how we're accomplishing that. Okay, had to refresh my memory and step through the code. This is where that whole your code should be self-evident thing can break down. Because your code being self-evident could be spread across multiple files, and even knowing where to start can be tricky. But Newt, you should have a design document. Nobody has a design document. Not a real one. At the beginning of your project, you might have a project spec that says all of the stuff that it needs to do, and you've mapped it out and said, we're going to do this, and then that changes wildly as soon as you start coding. And then you have your first commit, and it changes wildly again and again and again, and your project team doesn't give you time to go and update the project documents. And you get to the end, and the project document says it works a particular way, and you get a bug, and you have to go in and you read the project document, and it says it works this way, but it doesn't work that way at all, and it must not, or it'll break. I'm totally not speaking from experience. I'm giving task proximity trauma here. It's all the people that code professionally just like had a PTSD flash. Okay. So this is the thing that we really want to do away with. We want the entity to trigger a collision exactly once and then go away. We also want the visual to stick around. So what we're really how the collision happens. We are a little bit, because this is changing its category. And I'll have to find where we do the category change. Is that in our data for the explosion? Let's look at it. Bullet explosion does explosion lifespan. All right. Oh. Timers, timer lifespan. Yep. Timer lifespan has persist time. Persist time says stick around. Yeah. And if there's persist time, then we change its category. This is what I want to do away with. This is a hack and a half. What I'd rather do is that the entity doesn't care about incoming collisions. It will not process them. It has no health. And it goes away as soon as it does anything. So it will have bullet collision space, which means nothing but, it collides with nothing but enemies. They don't collide with it, so it's single directional. And then right after that, it goes away. The visual, on the other hand, sticks around for its whole duration, because it's going to be a temporary effect. It is an animation, like a sprite animation that plays to completion and stops, and then is removed. It is not tied to an entity. It is tied to itself playing out, which means we could completely detether it from that, because there wouldn't be the same structure. It wouldn't be a entity render node in the same fashion. It would be, but not the same. So we could change this to where entity render node is not just a type of node 2D, it is a type of render node, a thing render node, visual render node, which is kind of redundant because if you're rendering it, it's visual, but bear with me. And that render node largely just has that it initializes with an entity. We tell it what it is. We can set the entity as well. But it won't necessarily do any of these generate frames things. And when it's initialized, node render, where are we? Are we gluing all the pieces on? Yeah, here's where we assume that it is an animated sprite, and we add the children here. We could change this fully around. So instead of generating the frames when we set it up that way, it could be saying like, okay, this entity has a different visual setup. I will take that visual and I will load it in. And we could load the visuals independently. So a render node gets the visual object and just pins it to it. Which means we don't even need the render node as it is. We could have an entity visual, which is still node-based. And it would be remove visual. Remove entity visual. It would still have an associated entity. But getting real-time Newt thinking through the design process here. Oh. Push some buttons, push the buttons. Just real quickly, this should be Entity Manager. Since there can never be more than this many entities before things break, which is our max entity multiplier, which we don't really use anymore. The max entity multiplier was for the mesh-based renderer, which I'm probably going to rip out of code at this point, just to clean it up. Because we're not going to use that. It limits us too much. And it's very shader intensive. And I want to use the shaders for other stuff. Go to definition. But anyway, let's see. Is this... This allows us to have 24,000 entities, which is way higher than we need right now. We could make this much, much lower. Because the game slows to a crawl, like under 5,000. So, I mean, we could say that and probably clean up some of the pre-render here. Whee! Let's make it denser. All right, yeah, at 800, we're still over 100 frames per second. Let's strain it some more. This will ramp the number of them wildly. Yeah, so we're not even getting close to, you know, the 7,000 limit that we have imposed here. And the game is already straining. But if we drop it down even a little bit, it'll start to climb back up and suddenly everything is okay. Just for funsies real quick. Very different pattern. Difference between zigzag and the wave pattern is the wave is a smooth transition, whereas the zigzag is like a switch. So you'll get these like hard bumps periodically where it'll look like you'll see the ball kind of bounce a little bit, where it is combining the inward rotation with that hard switch. Anyhow, we'll load that. So the mesh renderer could handle a lot more, again, because it was shader based, but it meant that we could only render sprites of a fixed size limit. So if one sprite was 64 by 64, all sprites had to be that big. They could be small inside the sprite frame, but they all had to be that same size, and I had to be able to load it all into the graphics card. Very fiddly, very fragile. And it would limit us entirely to sprites. So let's see. We need... So now it is an entity visual that we're going to make. And the entity visual can be multiple things. If an entity visual is a sprite, we can run it this way and we can override some of its behaviors. Because we can still get the animation change. But when we get a remove entity for it, we wouldn't necessarily go away. We would let our animation fully play out. Because we don't care about the actual entity. Once one of these comes into existence, it sticks around. So we would raise this when we were done, not when the entity is done. And part of that would be... we don't care about that. That's an internal thing, though. Our set entity would change. So we could make this virtual. And during the set entity, because we're still going to watch the entity, and we're still going to watch and see if it gets removed in case we get change animation stuff. But we would make this a virtual, which would do largely the same things, like right here. All of this would be largely similar. The difference would be that we would change our animation to, instead of looping it, we would stop. And then we would want an event when the animation was done. Animation finished. So we would set it to play. We would need to make sure that it doesn't loop. And once it was done playing, that's when we would raise to remove the node. Okay. Then we need to have a way to specify what type of visual an entity uses. So instead of specifying the texture in the entity, we are specifying which visual to use. It references maybe textures, frame size, that kind of thing. But that would also open the door for us to be able to use, like, this is a special sort of shader kind of thing that will smear a beam animation across the screen or just stretch it kind of stuff. Because we do want to be able to have some sprites that are larger and have different behavior sets. Some things that are just particle effects, which would still effectively have like a sprite in them, but would just be, you know, emit this particle for its lifespan kind of stuff. Trail this entity with a particle. You could have multiple visuals stacked onto an entity. Yeah. That's what we need to do. Quickly, I've got to record this on my dev board here. I don't have a design document. I have a bunch of things that have entered my brain that I throw on a pile of notes and determine what I'm doing. Today's note is entity type, explosion type entity, which is not really what we're doing anymore. We are actually going to be doing non-sprite visuals in order to facilitate shifting over and having an explosion type entity. But this is also infrastructure based. Yeah, that's infrastructure. Okay. Doop-be-doo, don't want to forget. Okay, so this is an animated sprite, which is an entity render node. We need a way to specify what it is, or what is it a reference to. And a visual node or a visual type is also going to be catalogable, but it would also need to be a node 2D. Ooh. We could make... Can catalogable be an interface? It's... Category... We have a 2-copy method. This kind of puts it in class territory, doesn't it? Can it be... Yeah. All right, how are we going to do this? It doesn't have a node 2D, it contains a node. Okay. Okay. This is very wiggly. It's very wiggly. So let's talk through the thought process here. Right now, an entity render node is a node. I want to make the concept of an entity visual. Entity visuals are not nodes. They would contain the node and can relay the event up. Which would mean the node renderer needs to be able to attach the entity render node's node. When it removes it, it removes the render node's node, not the render node itself. Yes. Yes. Okay. So we're going to start and we're going to have an entity visual. Oh, okay. I don't really know what that error is, and I'm not going to stop and look or research. It ultimately doesn't matter. Oh, so this is a public node 2D node get set. Are JSON ignore though. Public entity visual. JSON constructor. So again, we want to load these from file. Default, this calls base. Visual, which has a catalogable, fix to copy. Does nothing currently, because we don't have anything in it. But it will be relevant in general. So they all have a node that you can get, which is by default a node. We could just have it default this in, but this is a guy that should never really be instantiated by itself. It just won't work. So then an entity visual can be other things. We just use this node to be like a wrapper around all of the stuff that this entity visual constitutes. It could just be a node as well, but we want it to have its visual elements. Okay, quick break, be right back, and then we'll continue. And we're back. Disentangle Molly. Okay, so the next thing we do is we make an entity visual. So it's going to be like entity sprite visual or something like that. And that sprite visual will have all of the information necessary to render an animated sprite. I'll do sprite, entity visual sprite. It extends entity visual. All right, an entity visual sprite is going to do most of this stuff. ID we may still need to wrangle in here, but we're still going to want to get an entity. We will put that... Let's get the entity in ID up here. And this will also need... We need a point where, yep, okay, we initialize it. We'll do ID that way. So this is our base for this. So this is a virtual. So you call into initialize on it, and that will get us our ID and our entity set. What you do with everything about the entity is up to the individual one. Let's actually have a... We're going to have a set entity here. Hey, Boom. Welcome. Set entity. Okay, by default, that's what it do. Everything should get a reference to its entity. It is relevant to have that. Again, though, what you do with it is going to vary. Because some of them are not going to care about that entity at all once you've got it. Like, once you extract information from that entity, you're done. You know, the animation plays where it is and never again is going to be one of them. But for like a sprite, it still tracks where the entity is most of the time. Okay. So we've got our set entity. This is where we're going to start to diverge. Cough, choke. You can see Sherbet and Molly there. There was a scuffle happening, and it continues to happen. They have circled around to the desk side here. Cute. They are in cat face-off pose now. That they're both pretty still with ears back a little bit. Both of them with one paw elevated. Oh. Man. Coughing a lot today. Okay, so when this one sets entity, we're going to have all this song and dance. it's pretty much the entirety of this is going to go into our sprite. Ah. Okay, but how can we get the ready event? Let's look at that. What events do we have? We need to know that the node is ready. Because until it's ready, some of this stuff isn't going to be doable. Is that actually the case, though? I don't think that's actually the case. Because we can't access information on children until the node is ready, because that tells us all the children are ready. But everything else in the node is available to us, so we don't need the ready. Okay. We shouldn't need the ready. Which is good. Fewer things to override. Set entity. We do the base. And then in our render node, when we set the entity, we do this kind of stuff, which is going to complain because all of this doesn't exist. So let's go find it. This will give us our generate frames. We're going to need to configure our sprite and our rotate to face, which will be part of this particular type of entity visual. We have our sprite and we have our rotate to face now. Rotate to face is going to be part of the texture that it gets for this. This will be node dot position. Okay. So there's our generate frames. We need a remove entity now. Let's get these on methods going. Let's get that whole mess in there. We need the events. That needs to be moved to here. Visually. Sammy has come to sit with me. Sammy is kind of a gently massage cat, and she's sitting on your lap. She doesn't mind some intensive scratches, but it'll get irritating to her, which is a common thing. You need to be gentle stroking a cat's fur to some extent because you are lightly pulling on their fur when you're doing it, and after a while that can be a strain. It's not much different than a person, you know. Than a human being. It's after a bit, contact can become like chafing, you know. Okay, so we have a remove entity visual. Our render node has a public event for that. Okay, so we have our on remove entity visual. And in our sprite, which is invoke on remove entity visual. We invoke that event here, and then we are going to actually call it in the sprite. Remove entity, we detach from those events. During the events, we have node.position. And we mess with the sprite. Okay. So we could largely replace entity render node with entity visual sprite with references to the corresponding node instead of removing that directly. So whenever we're creating an entity render node, we could replace it with a visual sprite at the moment. So by ID, get the render node, and whenever we're adding a child, we get the visual the entity visuals node. Okay, so let's get an interim in here. We have entity managers, and these are going to be entity visual. It's going to break all over the place in this. On remove entity visual. Entity visual. Code. Move entity visual minus equal. Visual, that is a public. Oh. The visual. The rename variable or rename functionality of Visual Studio is a lifesaver. If you rename a variable, it finds all references to that variable and updates it there. If you rename a class, it does the same. Everything is nice. Returns an entity visual. Visual, they're going to initialize it. Say on remove entity visual is going to be on remove entity visual. And we're going to add child, which is entity visual node. We're going to compile, and this will totally work first try. Wait, no, it won't. We are hard setting them to entity visual sprites. Otherwise, there would be nothing to render. But it still didn't work. Render no, or the entity visual sprite. Generate the frames. Set the node's position. Animation to play. Okay, the setup of the sprite is missing. Get the entity's texture key, which gives us the texture wrapper. New sprite frames. We make the sprite frames. Set the sprite. previously during the ready, we were creating the sprite. So we could go into the constructor of this and make a sprite and make it available. We could add it as a child of node. Because node isn't yet part of the tree, but that should still be okay. Yeah. Okay, so we are going to make this part of the sprites constructor. You hear something evil. Sprite, so this is... This is our JSON constructor. And we'll need a copy of the copy one for this too. Loggable copy. Do base in the constructor. Okay. Active void. That. Hello, Ember. Hello. Like right there, it was saying like, oh, for node.addChild, you want to add node to node's child list? Why, yes, I do want to create an infinite tree loop. Copy not equal null. Case visual sprite of to copy dot. Yeah. I know. Damn. Ember's being all squirmy because I keep moving to type and that's disrupting her position. So she gets some scratches to soothe her. Doing the swap hands method here. The greatest short film of all time, what would that be? Oof. You know, rig the Ember. Is that what you're doing? Hmm? Full of energy. Is that what you are? Yeah. Stalled omeletto. That is... Stalled Omelet is another, I think, good character name for one of Laura's Path of Exile characters. Make it so, Laura. Stalled Omelet. Okay, so we create the sprite when it is created, and we add it as a child of the node, and everything will be fine, and it will work this time. And it didn't. Let's run it in Godot, and one, see if we get any Godot side errors, and two, look at the nodes and see what we've got. Okay, the entities are still around. And in our entity node renderer, we still have them. They have animated sprites, but they have no frames. No frames. Okay, that's going to be a problem. Generate the frames. This is after we do set entity. Oh, he's chewing on an empty soda bottle. Okay, well, that'll lead to a problem. Set entity is never happening. That should happen. But I guess it's not happening. It's only an entity visual sprite. In our initialize, we call set entity with whatever entity is set. We initialize it here. Okay, so we're going to step in. All right, why that happen? Entity visual sprite. Overrides set entity. Entity visual. Oh, well. Do. That's why. And then we're going to go into actual set entity here. Okay. What did we just accomplish? We made it so that the visual representation of an entity is no longer hard bound to the entity. It's still a little. It's still a little. Because the entity carries the texture ID. So if we go here, when we are generating our frames, we are getting the entity's texture ID. We want all of that information to become part of this. So we would have... We can't do this yet because we would need to make the catalog for it. So we have texture key. And we have... This wouldn't actually need to be a texture key. This could be a... This could be an actual entity visual. Which we could copy, as every node has one of these, but it doesn't need to exist until we get to this point. So that is, in the catalog, an entity visual doesn't need to have an actual sprite generated. Like, the catalog one doesn't need to have node.addChild when we get to this point. If we move create sprite out of the constructor into set entity, into here, then let's try that. Yeah, I know, Emperor. I'm moving around. Hey, Harry. I am doing well. We're making progress. We're doing stuff. Move that over to here. We're going to rebuild the sprite. If we do this, when we reuse it, we'll have a problem. Same with the node. But the node will be created fresh each time. And we only need to manipulate the sprite once. It's that the sprite needs to be part of the individual object. So we could override initialize here and add create sprite. Base initialize, and we're going to create sprite here. We create it initially. Code is moving along. Code is moving along. We're updating how we create visuals in preparation for making it so that I don't have to have special handling for explosions. Hey there, Garrett. Right now, there is very special handling for how an explosion works, and it necessitates a problem as far as collision. I recall you did say that, Garrett. When we create it initially, it's any time we set up the sprite. Like when we create a copy or when we initialize it for the first time, we would create a whole new node in sprite. So what, you made a interpreted kind of scripting thing, or what is this language that you are claiming here mechanically? Right. Yeah, those are two very different things. What is your actual language? How are you operating it? We only need the node once it's initialized the first time. I think this is a fine place to recreate the node. We invoke here, so we unbind the entity. Do this. This is where we could unbind the sprite. We can remove the sprite. Child sprite sprite.qfree. Okay. I mean that still doesn't address the system, Garrett. Like C++ compiles almost directly into like a machine code layer. A lot of scripting languages have a secondary compile or interpreter process that switches it over. what are you dealing with? So whenever we reinitialize it, we're going to create the sprite. ASCII is a string representation key code, similar to like Unicode. That's just letters on a screen. Still not how the programming language work. So we already have a node, and we only need to add or remove the sprite. So we can create sprite, and we can, let's see, protected. Do that here. We can fetch this out of this code. I mean, again, Gareth, though, that's interesting and all, but the thing that I would be interested in is hearing about the actual operation of your programming language. You know, how you are making it actually function, not what it would look like in a text file. So first we are going to call remove sprite whenever we create sprite. And we'll call remove sprite in... Oh. Okay, I see what you're getting at. Okay, I mean, you are kicking off what sounds like a scripting language so far. So, I mean, that's still cool. We remove the entity, we remove the sprite, and we invoke remove visual. Okay. Now, when we initialize it, we're going to create the sprite, which will remove it if it's present, and then create the new ones. Ow, 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 ow. Ember. We could clean this up further because generate frames is also part of the... Well, we can't generate the frames until we get an entity. Okay. So, whenever we set the entity... Okay, whenever we initialize it, which will set the entity, we'll call create sprite afterwards. But we can't do it that way because set entity will happen first. But we can move this to set entity. remove entity. Yeah, okay. So we do the base set entity. We remove any existing entity logic. We are going to create the sprite, which will remake the sprite node. And then we will generate the frames. Which we can move into here. Go into our generate frames. If we have an entity, first we've got the set the sprite, but we are going to also add a remove for the sprite if it's present. We would bind sprite events here. Actually, move sprite, and then we will create sprite. This is called create sprite here. This is relevant because then we can very cleanly have an unbind for the sprite events, and then a bind for the sprite events. Okay. This is going to be things like the animation has stopped kind of thing. Huh. Okay. So this should get the sprite in there. Let's make sure it's still working. It's still working. Okay. Got visuals in place. Everything's still functional. This is good. Let's get a commit in. Now, it's not ready. Like, it's not fully done yet because the entity... Close my source control there. I am not aware of a platform related to that, but I am also aware that that is absolutely a safe search term that you have entered there. Even if the platform that you are referencing is not in context of that, that is something that is definitely something you should safe search. Oh, I know, but what I mean is that term exists in multiple use case stacks. I'm reminded of the College Humor Brennan Lee Mulligan president, a message from the CEO of Twitter. I'm sorry, no, Tumblr thing where the guy is convinced that internet rules and acronyms mean different things than what he thinks. In that, terminology can have multiple use cases based on the context. Not surprising. Okay, so if we bind the sprite events, it would be things like sprite dot care that that stuff changed. We don't. Okay, here we go. This equals sprite animation finished, which we will just call sprite animation finished. Protected virtual. There, and then we are going to go into the remove sprite. If the sprite is present, we are going to unbind that. Don't know that that's really necessary, but what might happen if we don't do this is that when a sprite event were to fire, it could trigger this. But since we're removing this sprite, this is not really necessary. But we're going to do it anyway for cleanliness. It's kind of like nulling variables that you're done with. It depends. I mean, you can't borrow them, but you can look at the kitty cats. Let's see. We have Sammy. We have Sky visible. Ah, okay. In the play area, you can see Molly is watching Ember. Yeah. Hey, Henry. Molly is stalking Ember. And Sky, it's not clear what Sky is looking at. Sky is looking down towards the top of the play area camera. All right, Alt, thanks for joining us. There is a decent chance that Molly's going to take a rush at Ember. I don't know who it was. I suspect it was Ember or Sammy that did it. But Molly has a little scratch on her muzzle to indicate that she needed to learn a lesson. Because I do recall a very emphatic hiss and a thump. So Molly may have pushed the limits a bit. It's hello, Ember. Ember is teeny tiny, but she's a bit of a cranky old lady sometimes. She frequently lets the other cats push her around because she's usually non-confrontational, but she has her limits. So my cats are very prone to trying to do things like step on keyboards, pull on cords, that kind of stuff. My keyboard is protected by what I refer to as the cat shield, which is a combination of an acrylic shelf that would frequently be used for things like a monitor stand, a couple of I mean, they're squares, but they're kind of T-squares, like measuring squares, to make like a angled roof over the keyboard. Every now and then, one of them still tries to squeeze under it, Molly especially. But it was especially important back when Tom was still around, big old Maine Coon, because he would like to roll his head onto the keyboard or slap a paw down. And if you're familiar, Maine Coons are great big kitties, and Tom's paw could easily hit like 5+ keys at once. Frequently, Garrett. It's less so like forgetting a letter because a good IDE will catch that, and more referencing the wrong thing. So, like, I have internal values. Sometimes there will be an external property that I might reference instead of the internal one, or when I have a sorted collection, I might reference the unsorted one that I just created a sorted copy of. Okay, so we've got the bind and unbind for animation finished. We aren't using that yet. Click. Public Boolean set false. Explicitly defaulted to false, even though a unset Boolean is 0 is false. Okay. So these two things would be an entity visual would not have a texture key. This would have a texture wrapper. We'll call it texture wrapper. Still have a get set, and it needs a converter for that. Which is, where is my JSON stuff? JSON. Texture name converter. JSON converter type of texture name converter. Yeah. Wrong symbol, like wrong operator, can be tricky, and especially if you don't have like a tool like an IDE or a compiler that is going to give you a result that makes sense. Because if the misplaced symbol is still a valid symbol, it's not necessarily going to be a compile problem or a hard error. Okay, texture name converter. Let's verify. Okay, no, that will convert it into a texture 2D, which is not what we want. We want a texture wrapper for this. So that needs to be a catalogable name converter. Catalogable name converter for a texture wrapper. Thanks for swinging through, Garrett. Okay. So this will get us the texture wrapper, and what we do is we enter it. So we're going to do that. This will create an error case, or at least it should. Mason tends to swing by and sleep on the bed during stream a lot. He hops down anytime I walk by in order to grab some attention, but then he'll go back to the bed. So generate the frames. Our texture wrapper is going to get the key. But that's okay. We can just say texture wrapper here. We'll break a couple of other things, but we can get you and you and you and you. Now, the fun thing is, I'm wondering if we're going to be able to duplicate a sprite. Because if we can duplicate a sprite fully, like copy or a duplicate. Yeah. So when we create a new sprite, if the sprite already exists, we could copy it. This is relevant because once I have this how we want it, where we are not getting the entity's texture key, but instead we're just taking the texture wrapper from the cataloged value, as soon as the texture wrapper is in place, I could make the sprite. I could have the node created already heading into this, such that when we copy the entity, we duplicate that whole thing. Because again, the sprite can be determined as soon as we have the texture wrapper, as soon as the object comes into actual existence. I don't need the entity for that. And entity visuals will be an element in the entity. The entity could contain the key of its entity visual. It will mean that as far as the node renderer, we're going to need to get rid of some of the ways that it caches. Because we don't really want to reuse them, given what we've got here. So we would take, like, rotate to face is based entirely on the texture wrapper. Hey there, Minty, welcome. So we don't even need rotate to face, because we have texture wrapper right here. So if we call you, that will create some error cases. So we can say texture wrapper is equal to services.catalog.copy. Copy texture to copy. Let's entity visual sprite. Equal to entity visual sprite, a cast of to copy to copy of visual, and that is as a visual.texture wrapper. This is as a texture wrapper. Ta-da! then play once is equal to no. Visual.play once. We'll need that later. Because if it's play once, we're just going to rip that visual right out. Like the visual will remove itself as soon as it's done playing. If it's play once, it doesn't care about the entity anymore. Yes. So we could do if play once. We are going to if texture wrapper dot rotate face. So this is on remove entity. We are going to remove entity, we're going to remove sprite, and we're going to invoke. I want to be careful about naming this. So we're going to trigger to remove the entity. We're going to remove the sprite, and then we're going to raise to remove the... I don't want to directly call this. Say trigger removal. Wow. That's very wrong. So if the entity goes away, then the visual goes away. If the sprite animation finishes and we're only supposed to play once, we also trigger the removal. So if in the explosion visual, I set everything up the same way, but subsequently say that its play once is true, then once that animation is finished, like after we do our play animation here, or after the animation change, no matter what, if an animation finishes, then we would trigger the removal of that visual entity. It is independent. It is independent of the entity as soon as play once is set. Well, it is partially independent of the entity. So I would be able to create the explosion, and its visual would be this instead. Would be the same animation as normal, with a given texture wrapper, but it would have play once set. which means to get this working, we need to have the entities have an entity visual key in them. Go into entity visual. Let's make sure that we get this. Entity visual. So that'll let it load into the catalog properly. Did we do that with Heart? We didn't do that with Heart. Don't know that we actually need that anymore, but I'm actually going to keep including it. Let's make sure this is working still. Okay, we are still functional. For those that haven't seen it before. Let's do spiral in, then wave, then explode. So we have a composite weapon system. They are adorable, Garrett, but they are also well concealed deep in the bunker. Catbot Corporation is not responsible for any inconvenience or injury visited upon persons who are found to be in areas that they are unauthorized to be within the Catbot factory. Visitors are to be informed or will be informed by posted warnings that all areas are unauthorized areas for visitors to the Catbot Corporation Catbot factory. Run through the game, we are doing a Bullet Heaven game. That is a game that is akin to stuff like Vampire Survivors, Hollow Cure, and the like. But we use a weapon system that is reminiscent of games like Noida, Magicraft, that kind of thing, where the way a weapon behaves has a default. So this is like the Yarn Ball. But then each of these little plates that we can put in place here make it behave that much more differently. So it moves in a spiral, it moves in a wave, it fires in 3 in quick succession, it splits into 3, it executes the subsequent weapon upon impact. So we can change things around on the fly here. I don't know if it'll be on the fly in the actual game, but we can add like an extra bounce heart. It will spiral out instead of in. It will zigzag instead of curve, and will burst 3 into 3 split, then 3 split, and every second it will explode. So we get very different movement results. The blue things at the top are the current representation of health. Those are hearts. Or the equivalent thereof. They are meant to represent that thing. But yeah, we can change fundamental behaviors of this very easily. See, we take hits, health bar goes away. Let's do after 3 seconds. So we do burst 1. It arcs out in an awkward zigzag. So a core element of the gameplay is going to be not only choosing a weapon set and upgrading it in general, but also figuring out combinations that amplify the weaponry to its maximum when available. Because the modifiers are as they are, it's going to be possible for us to make a very wide range of power-ups that will add more variety to the game, or at least that is the thought. The slimes are placeholders. They are actually a thing that would be much later in the game. The enemy set will be very different. It's just that I thought the slimes were cute and I wanted to animate them because they're good. Things that bounce and stretch are good ways to learn to animate, especially cartoony fashion. You get some good motion out of them. Okay, gotta check a couple things here. Buttons. Okay, I think we're gonna wrap up here. We're right about on the marker. So yeah, good progress today. Buttons. They will be. They will be a basic enemy, Garrett, but there will be many other things that would appear before them. They are a semi-deep lore reference. But yeah, made some progress today. So we were initially looking at getting the explosive collision in there, but mechanically there were problems with how I was thinking it would work. But by reviewing how things function in Godot and also how we had it set up, by changing the way that visuals are represented, we can get away from the existing problem that we have with them. This is good. This is good. In particular, explosions right now rely on a special sort of lifespan timer that is really awkward to account for. And it necessitates a bit of logic that is, I don't think, actually working how it's supposed to. I don't think it works reliably. By getting that bit of logic out of there, we can then start adjusting the way that the object actually lives. And that will give us a bit more of an opportunity to make sure that it works properly. This would then allow us to extend into other special ways of representing damage as well. Once we've got the visuals updatable, we can represent different visuals, but we're also going to be able to extend that into the collision handling. That same sort of logic to, instead of it just being the collision handler for this draws a circle, it would say, hey, I'm also going to do like a ray cast or something like that. And see, is there anything in this straight line? that straight line might only fire once, but then it has an animation that could play out over the whole distance. Like surfaces. You would need to clarify. But yeah. I think we got some good stuff done today. Let's get this logged here. Catalog types in. Those. I mean, I know it's a word and I know there are concepts associated with it, but it would depend on what we're talking about actually there, Garrett. But in any event, again, thanks everybody for swinging by to watch with us. This week we are going to be once again trying to get a lot of coding done. Ideally, the schedule will stay accurate. It is posted on YouTube, Blue Sky, and X at the moment. I've forgotten to post it in the Discord, but I will hopefully get around to that in a moment. But yeah, if you like what you saw and would like to see more, remember to like, follow, subscribe, push all of those buttons. They generally help the channel grow. If you'd like to consider financially supporting the channel, you can do so through platform-specific subscriptions and donation vectors, as well as Patreon and Ko-fi. You can find links to all of these options and my channels via a link tree in my description and bio. With all that said, I do hope the rest of your day is good, and I'll see you next time.